Welcome to Bodkins Curiosity Shop, where you'll find the unique, the bizarre, and sometimes the haunted. Feel free to look around, peruse the items, and never fear, there's nothing here that bites. Hard anyway. Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Bodkins Curiosity Shop. I am your shopkeeper, Chris Baker, and today we have an interesting item to show you. While this item may not be haunted or cursed, this item has seen its fair share of the unexplained. Now, this is a branding iron. You'll see the brand of an A at the end. While this item is indicative of the Old and the New West, it also reminds me of a Wyoming ranch where one could explore the vastness of time and space. And therein lies the essence of today's episode of Bodkins Curiosity Shop. So let's pull out the mutoscope and take a look at Season 2 of the Amazon Prime series, Outer Range. So Outer Range is a series that premiered on Amazon Prime in April of 2022. 6 months later, in October, we found out there was going to be a second season of Outer Range, and I couldn't have been more excited. I really loved Outer Range Season 1. It starred Josh Brolin, Lily Taylor, Louis Pullman, Tom Pelphrey, Imogen Poots, just a wonderful cast, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of this amazing cast. But it had a really cool idea, taking the modern Western, a Western Nouveau motif, and adding science fiction to it. And one of the things I really loved was that addition of science fiction to a modern day Western story, which I thought was kind of cool. And I think what I loved about Season 2 is that they delved even further into the science fiction. Not that I don't love the drama of the modern Western, but I really like that they kind of doubled down on the science fiction. I don't know whether that has to do with the fact that they changed showrunners. Of course, Season 1 was run by the creator of the series, Brian Watkins. In Season 2, we had Charles Murray, who you may know from Sons of Anarchy. He did some writing on Sons of Anarchy. He was an executive producer and did some writing on Luke Cage. So, I mean, if you're talking about a showrunner, Charles Murray, he's been on some pretty impressive shows. Sons of Anarchy speaks for itself. I mean, I've never watched it, but I know tons of people who do, and tons of people who tell me I've got to watch this show. Maybe one of these days I'll watch it, but I haven't yet. And, you know, this kind of makes me, maybe I should give it a watch. But Luke Cage was one of the Netflix Marvel shows that I really enjoyed. And hopefully we'll see Luke Cage come into the MCU at some point. I know they've made all those shows canon, so I think when the time is right for Mike Coulter, I think we'll see Luke Cage in the MCU. But there again, that's a whole different show and not what we're talking about. But you know, a couple really good shows. A guy that was a part of those, he's now running this, and I don't know. Maybe it is him who is the reason why we're delving a little more into the science fiction aspect of this, because this show really is, to me, it feels like a combination of like Yellowstone, not so much in all the intrigue that goes along with that. Not that there isn't some, like, you know, warring families intrigue and maybe not big political intrigue, but there's stuff like that kind of drama, family drama in it. But it's that nouveau Western, that modern Western story. So it's a little bit like Yellowstone meets Lost in kind of the unexplained, where the hell is this going? Now, granted, I have every faith that Outer Range has a better idea of where this show is going than the people who were doing Lost back in the day, but it does have that feeling of the unknown and the unexplained. You cross those two with the Netflix series Dark. If you haven't watched that and you're a sci-fi fan, I don't know what you're waiting for. It is all the best of like science fiction and time travel and multiple timelines. And this story, while it's not a direct comparison to the two, it really has that feel like they may be going into something like that. So that's one of the things that really makes me like this, is that you've got the family drama of a modern Western. You have the unexplained and the bizarreness and the where the hell is this going? What am I watching? And then you have that really deep sci-fi philosophical bit that reminds me of Dark, and that's why I love this show. And season 2 doubled down on everything it established in that first season, and that's what this is. I mean, the first season established all the characters, established the circumstances, established some things that we haven't quite gone back into in season 2, and that may be a bit of a maybe not a letdown, but I wonder if maybe because of the new showrunner we're not gonna dive down these avenues, but at any rate, they really did a lot with the science fiction, a lot more than what you got in that first season, and I absolutely enjoyed season 2. So without further ado, we are going to get into some spoiler territory. So if you haven't watched Outer Range season 2, go watch it, come back, hear my thoughts on it. If you have, or you don't care about spoilers or the show one way or the other, you're just here to see what's going on, kick some tires, do a little rubbernecking. Hey, you know what? The more the merrier. But right now we are going to head into some spoiler territory. So as I mentioned, there's a lot that goes on in this season. There's a lot of things with various characters, and I'm not going to touch on everything beat by beat, but I am going to talk about some of the things I liked and some of the character stories that I really liked. And one of the things, and this picks up primarily right after the events of the season finale in season 1. You don't have any time off. You don't have any time in between where it's like, okay, where are these characters at now in their life, and where the story picks up. It does pick up right after the events of that season finale in season 1. And it really left off with a lot of different things. You have Perry jumping into the hole. You have the disappearance of Royal and Celia Abbott's granddaughter, Amy. You have Autumn, who's been trampled by mysterious bison. You even have the deputy sheriff, Joy Hawk, who played by Tamara Podemski. I loved her in the first season. I was really glad to see she got a bigger story in this season. Now, since I watched season 1 of Outer Range, my wife and I have watched Reservation Dogs, and I realized that Tamara Podemski is in Reservation Dogs. She plays Teeny, and I really loved her in that show because, she shows she's got comedic chops. She shows she's got a lot of dramatic chops in that series, and it's really fun to see the different types of characters, where this is really a more serious, dramatic character, a wonderful actress. And I was, like I said, glad to see her get more of a story in this, where she goes back into the 1880s and we see her. And it's really interesting how, like, at the end of season 1, she goes back in time, but she doesn't jump through the hole like everyone else did. She's just gone far enough off the grid into the Twilight Zone, whatever you want to call it, where she just slips back into time. And it was really cool because of she's a Native American woman, and to be able to look out on a Native American settlement with all of the teepees and the people riding around on horses and the buffalo, and to see history come alive and her reaction to that, it was really, I really felt that in that finale. And then to see her in this, and she becomes a part of this tribe and is living with them for 4 years before she comes back only after a few days. And that to me was really interesting, her running into a young royal and how she may have changed the timeline, may have changed history, because in the first season we see that Royal shoots his father accidentally, where in this, when Joy is put into play, instead of killing her, he kills his father. And they changed how Royal ended up jumping into the hole. And I think, I don't know whether they're doing that just to retcon how it happened, or if they're doing that, which I think this is the case, to show that history can be changed. Some things still happen the way they do or the way they have to, but how they get there may be a little different. So I thought the Joy Hawk storyline was really interesting and really raised a lot of questions. How this jumping back in time works. Are they creating multiple timelines, like a multiverse sort of situation? I pray to Jesus that we don't get a multiverse situation. I've got enough to handle multiverses with Marvel and old school DCEU. I don't need another multiverse. I'm sure Josh Brolin has said, I don't care what we do. I don't want to do a GD multiverse. So I don't think they're doing that. I do think that they're kind of playing with the idea that you can change history by going back in time. You can change the means, but you can't change the ends. Sort of situation. I could be completely wrong, but that's my take on it. Another case in point is the Tom Pelphrey character, Perry, who goes back in time and sees a younger version of his mom and dad before they were married, and he's trying to go find his ex-wife. But the thing that was really interesting is after all is said and done with what's going on with him in the past with his younger version of his father and mother, when he gets pushed back into the hole, he goes back into the future, but not quite far enough. He goes back to that moment where he killed Wayne Tillerson's son, and his intervention caused this timeline's version of him to be killed, and him trying to replace himself. I have to imagine there are going to be some repercussions from the universe for doing that. I can't imagine that ending well. And how will that, if Wayne Tillerson's son didn't die in that fight with Perry and he's still alive and Perry's still alive, how does that affect the timeline in the present day with what's going on? So it raises a lot of questions. I don't know if they'll have an answer for it other than just that's what's in the script, which to me, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think the writing is lazy. That would be lazy writing. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they are going to explain it somehow. There again, for every question that's answered, another question is raised. Another two questions are raised. But I like the Perry storyline. I liked his involvement with a younger Wayne Tillerson and punching him and breaking his nose. And the idea that Celia and Wayne Tillerson were an item, and Wayne Tillerson's grudge against Royal Abbott has to do with the fact that he feels that he stole Celia away from him. I thought that was really interesting. Added some backstory and some history to these characters. Some reason for the assumed history that these families must have had. I like the idea that using that mineral that almost gets you some sort of psychedelic look into the future high. I like how Wayne Tillerson saw that Perry was gallivanting around the timeline and decided he was going to do that himself. That all was really interesting. And there again, leads to so many more questions that I hope we get satisfying answers in the potential season 3. Then I really liked the relationship between Royal Abbott and Celia Abbott, played by Josh Brolin and Lily Taylor. I love these two actors, and they have such good chemistry. I like the idea that their relationship is strained because of the secrets he's been keeping about the fact that he is from 1880s and came to the future. I like how he finally comes clean, and that idea that, keeping secrets destroys relationships like that, because the weight of a secret is too much to bear sometimes. And I wish the Lily Taylor character Celia, I wish she wasn't as broken most of the time. Even though Lily Taylor plays it perfectly, I like when we get to see strong Celia, but you do have those moments of brokenness that make her feel real. So I guess that's probably not a bad thing, but I like her when she's the badass. And I like that when her and Royal are going off on that road trip to find their granddaughter, and the race against time because Autumn and Luke are trying to get her as well. And then that big climax where you have Autumn with Amy, and the revelation throughout this season, because they teased it at the end of last season and they quantified it in this season, that Autumn is a older version of Amy. And for Autumn to be who she is, an older version of Amy in this timeline, she has to go through the whole and end up in the time that would put her at this age, at this moment. Like Autumn says, for her journey to continue, Amy's has to start. So for her to be in this timeline as an older version of Amy, Amy has to eventually go through this hole in the ground that sends you through time. And that is, I mean, it's a mind F to try and wrap your mind around that. It's kind of like the I'm my own grandpa sort of scene. If you've never heard that, there's a song to it, and you can find it on YouTube or something. I'm quite sure, but it is kind of like one of those mind warpy things that I really enjoyed how that played out. Joy trying to stop them, shooting Autumn, and then Amy inadvertently still falling into the hole. Kind of the idea that things are going to still play out the way they're supposed to play out, and that they might get there in a different way, but they still end the same way. And that's one of the main themes of this. I mean, there's so many themes of fate and faith, destiny and divinity, and one of those shows that makes you think in a very good way, and it makes you kind of cogitate on these sorts of things about what role we have to play in destiny, and what role we have to play in how things are supposed to be as opposed to how we make them. And I love shows that put your mind to work after it's all said and done. And it makes me really excited for us to get a third season. I hope we get a third season. We had to wait 6 months till we found out there was going to be a season 2. Hopefully we don't have to wait that long. Hopefully enough people watch this and show Amazon that this deserves a season 3, at least one more season. We've got to find out where things are going. I do have to imagine that this show does have to have a finite number of seasons. I don't know what that number is, and I'm sure they have in mind an idea of, we want to get this many seasons in to tell our story, because there's still a lot to be told. There's the scientist that has discovered what's going on there, or at least an idea of what's going on there with the mineral, and she's trying to discover I like her theory about how time is like a river and it flows under the lands of the Abbott Ranch, and how that is going to play into the future that we saw in the first season, where Royal is pushed through the hole by Autumn, and he shows up at this future where there's all these scientists and lights at this hole, and Celia says that he died 2 years ago. That's something they didn't really delve into, the notion that Royal is going to die, or at least in the first season he was going to die in a couple years, and that tied into things with Autumn. I don't know if they have kind of gone away from that, or if it plays into the notion that you can change the timeline. Things may not end up the way you thought they would, or they may end up the same, but you may get there in a different way. I guess, it's either something where they just are abandoning that plot line, or it's going to be fleshed out a little more in the next season, and it just wasn't anything to really focus on in this season, which I could understand that. It is definitely something that you can revisit in a season 3 that won't hurt the continuity or the story that was told in season 1 or in season 2. I think one of the biggest disappointments of the season was the misuse, or not even misuse, the lack of use of Lewis Pullman's Rhett Abbott, the younger son of the Abbott kids. And I really like him. I can't wait to see him in the new Salem's Lot adaptation that they're going to do. It's what they're going to send that straight to video, so hopefully we'll see that sometime in the near future. Looking forward to seeing him in that. But I like the relationship between him and Maria. It's just not terribly interesting, and I feel like the character of Rhett Abbott is kind of wasted on the bigger story, because he just doesn't have any involvement in it. He's just kind of along for the ride, and I feel Lewis Pullman is a better actor than that I wish we could see him get used a little better. Now, it could be a situation like Tamara Podemski, where, I didn't think she was used a whole lot in that first season, but she really got some stuff to do in season 2. So I'm hoping maybe somewhere along the way, if we get a third season, we might see the Rhett Abbott character used a little more, and that way we could see a little more of Lewis Pullman, having something to actually do in this series again, which I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Now, something I thought they did a lot better this season than last season, and that may be in part to the involvement of Charles Murray, is the fact that in season 1, my biggest complaint about it was the CG. They used a lot of CG animals, CG bears, CG bison, CG other things, wolves and whatnot. It was all really bad CG. I noticed that in this season, they really used CG animals sparingly. They used more real animals, which I thought was perfect, because there's no reason. I mean, that's why old school movies and TV shows looked so real, is because they used real animals and didn't rely on CG to create everything. But I noticed that they kind of held back on the CG, and even when they did CG, it was sparing, and it was a lot better. They only used CG a couple times as far as new shots, and they could spend a little more time making them look real. Like the one deer, you could still tell it was CG, but it was a little better than what you would have seen in some of the other seasons. There were some flashbacks to some of the old CG buffalo and things like that it looks like they may have gone back in and touched it up and made it look better. So I was really glad to see that the CG was used more sparingly in this season, and the CG was, when they did use it, a lot better than it was in the previous season. It wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it looked a lot better. And I like the CG hole looked really good, which I quite enjoyed that. That's such a centerpiece of this show, almost a character unto itself, that I'm glad that they may have tweaked that a little bit, because I thought that looked really good this year, where like last year in some places it didn't seem quite as good as others. But hopefully we'll get a third season. I don't know when we're going to hear that. I'm hoping, like I said, that we'll get a confirmation on a season 3 sooner rather than later. I know that this is getting really good scores, at least audience scores, and maybe critic scores. I haven't looked at those, but I know audience scores are really high on some of the aggregate websites, Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that. So hopefully if enough people watch this, when you've got somebody like Josh Brolin acting in it, a world-class actor, a lot of really good actors in this, but he's an executive producer. Brad Pitt is an executive producer. When you've got that sort of star power behind something, I would think that Amazon would be a little more like, yeah, maybe, this didn't do as good as last year, but we'll give you another season, hoping that they'll do more things with their, studio, Amazon MGM. And, that's just my thinking. What do I know? I'm not a business insider, so I don't know. But I would think with that sort of star power, there'd be a little leeway. I'm hoping that this show does well. I don't want it to just get another season just because of the names attached to it. I think the show deserves a third season. I think the show got better from season 1 to season 2. I think you have fantastic actors in this. Like I said, Josh Brolin, Lily Taylor, Will Patton is a powerhouse. Man, that guy plays bad guys. I mean, he plays good guys well, but he plays bad guys better than most. And he just has such a command, a very Shakespearean way of saying things, over the top and dramatic, but you believe it. You feel it in the marrow of your bones. And I just absolutely love him in this. And we got to see him back as the big bad guy of season 2. He was kind of sidelined a little through season 1, but he was back and really loved him. But when you've got a show with this much talent, and you've got a show where they know where their bread is buttered, and that is in making this a sci-fi show. It can be new Western all you want, but if it doesn't have the sci-fi, then you're going to lose your audience because nobody's watching this just for the drama. If you want that, you can go watch Yellowstone or any of the other 15 spin-offs of that series. Not that it's a bad series. I just, I want sci-fi. If I want to watch drama, I'll go watch that show. I want to watch this because I want to see science fiction and a new Western, hand in hand, doing something that you don't get a lot of. You don't get a lot of Western sci-fis, modern or period piece. And that's really what intrigues me the most about this. You've got a great cast. You've got an interesting idea, a way to go into a sci-fi time travel show. And it is a mash of genres with that new Western genre meeting science fiction. And there's nothing like that on TV. And I want more of it. I need more of it. I don't expect this show to go on forever. I think they do need to have a plan, have a finite number of seasons that they want to tell a particular story in and do it right and be done. But I hope we get more seasons of this so they can tell that story. I want to see this story play out to its conclusion, and I want some GD answers because there is a lot of shit going on that I just, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe there is no answer. Maybe it's just going to be unexplained when it's all said and done at the end of the day. But if it ends in a satisfying way, I'm okay with that. But we're going to need at least one more season to do that because they left us on a bit of a cliffhanger. And hopefully we'll find out in the not too distant future when season 3 will come out. And fingers crossed we'll get that word soon. But if you haven't watched Outer Range, go check it out. Like I said, brilliant cast. Imogen Poots, I didn't really talk much about her, but her as Autumn she does such a wonderful job. She borders that line of devious and dastardly, and you hate her guts for what she's doing. You don't understand why, so sometimes you feel empathy for her, but then she does things for the Abbott family because she's their granddaughter just from the future. And it's just, she runs a gamut of emotion, as I've said on this show before, that is really impressive, and she makes you feel so much. She makes you feel empathy for her. She makes you feel like, oh, she's not so bad. She's misunderstood. She is a part of this family. She does love them, but then she does things that seem against them, and it's just a really complex character that Imogen Poots plays so well. But I love this cast, love this show. Hopefully you've got a chance to watch it. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I do. If you haven't, go check it out, and I would love to hear what you think about it. So I want to thank everyone for listening to my thoughts on Outer Range Season 2. You can check it out on Amazon Prime. You can also check out what's going on with Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shop on our Facebook and Instagram pages. Please like, follow, subscribe to us wherever you happen to be listening to this podcast. Leave those reviews. 5 stars would be awesome, but whatever review you leave, we do appreciate that. And please share this podcast with anyone that you know that loves horror, fantasy, and science fiction. So until next time. Thank you for visiting Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shop. We hope that you found something to your liking and visit the shop again soon. But even though you may come back, you never really get to leave Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shop.